This is the Outlaw Apostle Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Neff. I'm the fucking guy. And we are doing this show as like a review of Thomas DeLauer's recent interview of Dr. Bill Campbell, PhD. He's a fat loss scientist. You know, my take on what I'm trying to do is to help y'all out and break it down in like layman's terms, because that's what I understand and what works for me and how this has worked for me and what my experience has been with this over the years. And maybe that can help you too and dispel some of these other crappy myths out there. We always like to say there's a lot of great information out there. There's also a lot of bad information, and that includes when we talk about protein. But I do want to add this. We are not watching this video the whole way through. I wanted to focus this on just the protein portion. And so we are going to be skipping some parts. I do highly recommend, you know, if you're into fitness like I am, is if you're into doing intermittent fasting, low carb, keto, Thomas DeLauer is one of the better ones out there I've found to follow and get information. So let's get this video started. It doesn't end well unless it ends. Can't just report the fucking obvious. It's just a motherfucking jump. Just go.
As someone that studies fat loss literally for a living, you're a fat loss scientist, what would you consider the most profound stimulator for fat loss for people in everyday life?
So the things that come right to mind are exercise. I look at protein as a lipolytic nutrient, caffeine. So those are the, again, in my world that I focus on. Of course, then you can get into like drugs, certain drugs, beta adrenergic agonists, like things like that. So,
Okay.
but in my world, protein, caffeine, exercise.
No disagreement from me. You know, protein is number one, caffeine's number two, and exercise number three. Because as important as exercise is, especially to maintain muscle, diet is everything when it comes to losing weight, controlling your weight. The studies that he's going to talk about are going to focus on fat loss, but also on maintaining and building muscle. But just the importance of protein and what differences it makes by even increasing the amount of protein in your diet.
It's through research. So I remember specifically, I think it was around 2014, 2015, I read a study, Joey Antonio, he's a professor at Nova Southeastern. He gave resistance-trained males and females really high protein. It was like 3.3 grams per kg. He did another study where it was up to 4.4 grams per kg. So the highest protein intake recorded in the scientific literature that I've been able to find. And again, he did several studies around this. And in one of the studies, they had increased their calorie intake by several hundred, 500, 600, 700 calories more than baseline. And they did not gain any body fat. In one of his other studies, also increasing calories only from protein, and they lost body fat. And they increased their calories by several hundred calories. So I read, I'm reading these studies, and they weren't the best designed studies, but I'm like, I don't believe, this is hard for me to believe. I was taught, increase your calories, you gain body fat. So here's some studies. So I did my own study in my lab in resistance-trained females, where we had one group, we randomized them. One group, we said, you cannot eat more than 1.2 grams per kg. So do not go over this. The other group, we said, you have to eat at least 2.4 grams per kg. And I'm very proud of this study. It was very well controlled. So all of the workouts were supervised in my lab. All of the subjects had to be resistance trained. If they couldn't, I think they had to deadlift like 1.25 times their body weight, or they couldn't enter the study. So we did some objective measures to make sure that they were at least demonstrating that they were likely resistance training. They all had a personal coach that would answer questions if they needed it on protein intake. And after the study was over, the high protein group gained more lean mass. Not surprising. That's how we view protein. But they lost a significant amount of body fat relative to baseline. So it didn't quite meet the threshold to be a statistically significant difference between the two groups, but they lost a significant amount of body fat relative to baseline levels. So now I'm like, okay, I had a hard time believing another lab's results. Now this is my lab, my study. We designed the study. It was one thing I know is my data, and I trust my data. And then I started being, a little more open-minded to this, and I found another study, and then another study.
And then another. And I like that. I just love that about this. So first, that's the thing about science. People want to throw around the science term like it's an absolute. Science is ever evolving. And what any scientist will tell you is for everything they know or think that they know, there's way more about that subject or topic that they're studying or looking at that they don't know. Here's a scientist who had a certain perception. He thought if you take in more calories, regardless of what macro it was, whether it was protein, fat, or carbs, that it didn't matter, that you were going to gain weight. If you're over baseline and you're eating more calories, you're eventually going to put on fat. That didn't happen. He had a hard time believing it. What did he do? He was actually in a position to do his own study and did, and not a small study. This wasn't 10, 15 people, 25 people, 250 people. A highly controlled study, and got those results.
It's safe to say that, having a protein shake is probably as close to a legit, probably the more effective fat burner, independent of caffeine, maybe.
Yeah, if that protein shake is only again, we have overfeeding studies where they gave a lot of protein, but when they have a lot of carbs and fat, I haven't. That data doesn't come out like I'm saying here. I've taken this to, as I work with people trying to lose body fat. Like if you struggle with hunger, my advice is if you're going to overeat on protein, because the outcomes are not as negative than if you're getting Takis.
Does the protein itself, excess protein itself, actually store as fat, or does it sort of reallocate where other macronutrients go? Because it's kind of hard for protein itself to turn to fat, right? It just maybe.
Yep. Yeah. I think so. Now, I do have a mechanistic study that I think it was isotopically labeled that clearly demonstrated excess protein can be deposited as body fat. So it can happen, but I've not seen this in actual applied human research. So it's almost like it's a nutrient partitioning agent where the calories are being shuttled more towards lean tissue, which again, muscle is protein, and protein is amino acids. So that makes sense. But the fat loss aspect is, I'll just say it's odd to me.
Yeah. So one of the things, again, that I've said over and over and over again is it's hard to overeat on protein. It's hard to eat too much protein. Now, I understand there's a cost to doing all that, but the whole idea is protein is good for our bodies. It's good for the nutrients that we get. Eat your vegetables, have some carbs, but base everything around the protein first and fill in from there. That's when you're going to get your best results. When I talk to clients about using these GLP-1s, it's still about lifestyle change. I still talk to those clients about how important it is to get the protein in. You got to get the protein in and then fill in from there. Don't make your diet so fucking difficult. Just, what junk is. Get rid of the junk. When people tell me, oh, my diet's really good, it's clean, I'm eating, chicken and fish. They don't even mention red meat. Like, get some red meat in there, man. Unless there's a reason you can't eat it, get that red meat in there. It is good for you. We were all lied to, all right? The red meat is good for you. Cows fart. Don't worry about the environment. We'll all be okay. Eat the cows. Thank you for watching the Outlaw Apostle Podcast. This is a new type of comment or content that we're doing right now for you, which is going to be shorter. It's going to be in that 20 to 30 minute range. We're going to do our best not to go over 30 minutes, right? And on just one specific topic in that 20 to 30 minutes. So, maybe it's give or take 5 minutes either way, but that's what we're going to do for you. If you like this kind of content, let us know. It's something new that we're trying. If you want to see our full podcast, those are available too. Just me and my opinion and what's going on. And we're still trying to ramp up the interviews, and that should be happening very, very shortly, where we're going to be able to do that and get those in. We started weekly now, doing live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We try to start at 9 a.m. Out here in Arizona. So whatever time that works out for you, catch us then. God bless. Help us out. Hit that subscribe button.
What about timing? And I want to dive into, I think it was that December 2023 study. What is it? I don't know if it was Nutrients. Where was it published? Talking about like the 100 grams in one serving.
Yes,
You and I were talking about that offline a little bit. There's some limitations to that study. There's some things that people should probably understand. But before we get into the nuance of that study, like, does the timing seem to matter? So if protein is lipolytic, if someone were to have a large bolus of protein, is it a more grandiose lipolytic effect? If someone were to just say, hey, I'm going to finish my workout and I'm going to have 100 grams of protein right now, or perhaps having it more evenly spread throughout the day, what have you seen to be ideal? Does it really matter? Is there a limitation there?
So if somebody were to tell me, in terms of distributing throughout the day, if somebody were to tell me my primary goal is to build as much muscle as I can, then the strategy is, well, we want to make sure that you get your total daily protein intake. And if you get that all in one meal, okay, that's not ideal. But that study we're going to talk about next, that made me appreciate, well, it's not as bad of a decision as I used to think before reading that study. But we have other human data, one of them I think it was a study from Spain on male bodybuilders, where what the best strategy is to approximately equally distribute your total daily protein intake throughout the day. So whether that's 3, 4, 5 protein feedings, that is the best strategy to optimize muscle mass. Because I can also point to research that says when they didn't do that, if we skewed more protein to the night, which is what a typical Western diet does, they've not gained as much muscle. So that's the ideal if the goal is to build as much muscle as possible.
Interesting. Okay, so
and that's an applied long-term study, not a meal to meal.
That's true. And I don't think most people are looking necessarily, meal to meal, unless you're doing some extreme crash diet, in which case there's a lot of other factors there. So, okay, with this study that looked at 100 grams of protein in one sitting, I'll let you describe it, but I mean, in essence, it was 100 grams of protein one sitting. Found that it was just delayed absorption throughout the course of a 12-hour period after that.
Yes.
But what did this study teach you? But what were the limitations of the study? Because I don't want people to just think that they can just get away with doing that all the time.
Yeah, and I'm curious to what you thought. I want to also hear what you thought the limitations were, and I'm trying to think right now. And I covered this in my research review, and I always list limitations of the study, but maybe it'll come to me. But let me just say, I really love that study. It was the best acute protein study I've ever read because they traced every practical question I would ever have as a scientist. And I don't know how many times throughout my career I've been asked, hey, more than 30 grams is a waste. You don't eat more than 30 grams. And now I can say, well, here's the receipts. It's not true. So the study gave subjects.
And that is something that I wanted to mention, that's a very popular opinion out there and still is, and is probably still the predominant opinion out there that people express, that getting more than 25 to 30 grams of protein is a waste. And it's not. Your body is going to use it in other ways besides just building muscle, for protein synthesis. Whatever your body can't process at one time, it's going to process it in a more delayed way. Now, in this particular study, they did use, casein protein 2 versus whey. The whole principle of this, let's just make it easy and not make it complicated for you. Timing does not matter. It's not the most important thing. What the most important thing is when it comes to protein is going to be getting it in for yourself daily and being able to do that consistently. For me personally, being a 57-year-old man who's, trained most of my adult life, I've had periods of time where, things weren't quite so great, right? That I went through periods of life where I got a little bit of chubby and I got off track, or, back during my drinking days, which I've talked about as well. But in all of the various diets that I used, I can tell you this, they were all high protein, whether they were low fat or low carb or keto or Mediterranean or whatever. And I've been a follower and a believer. If you are legitimately working out on a regular basis, 4 times or more a week, you should be trying to get in 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. That should be your goal on a daily basis. For people who are not gym rats and just want to lose weight and be healthy and fit in their clothes, well, when I help the people on the GLP-1s, my clients that are taking the GLP-1s, I'll use them as an example, and I think this should be true for about everyone. I try to, whatever our target weight is, we try to get 70% of whatever that target weight is in grams of protein. So if somebody was the target weight was 140 pounds, that would be 98 grams of protein. Might as well just make it 100. I would tell them to try to get 100 grams of protein in a day. That's going to be enough for that person. But more is always better. That's the whole point of this video. More is not a bad thing and may help you be more consistent as far as, especially if you want to get off of the GLP-1s at some point, and you've changed your lifestyle to, now you're better able to control yourself and your cravings by getting that extra protein in. So this part, though, this is about the whey protein versus milk protein.
See, it's like you're getting a little bit, these titles are getting, they're playing the game too. It's kind of funny.
I guess the culture filters to the nerdy scientists.
Yeah, exactly. But you asked me about the limitations. The study design, I don't think there was a lot of limitations, but I think the one thing that would just pop to mind is that, okay, well, where it opens up maybe additional questions is when people look post-workout, they're not usually looking at milk protein. They're usually talking like whey protein, something. So that would be something that would be interesting, something that is rapid absorbing because, talk to like Mike Israetel about it. He was like, oh, I don't think that study's anything that amazing because it's like, of course, like it's just all it did is like drip out, digestion or, absorption over the course of 12 hours. He's like, of course that's going to happen. He's like, people just don't usually give it an opportunity for that. I'm like, well, yes and no. I also feel as though like post-workout, there's probably not a lot of people that are doing straight milk protein. Like most people post-workout, the questions that came up are, okay, well, can I have a 100-gram whey protein shake? And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit different because that is different. Maybe we're not going to hyper-absorb all of that in one sitting because if we are talking sustained release over the course of 12 hours, that would apply a little bit more if you're looking at like an equal part or 25% whey and 75% casein or something like that. So there's a lot of people who say, well, this is nothing new. We know that casein digests slow. I'm like, okay, yes, but we're not talking just about digestibility here. We're talking about what is, I think the radioisotope there, right? I mean, like it was like all the way down to like what, what's getting to the muscle. So it's less limitation on the study design and more about, okay, how can we maybe add additional arms to this where it can silence some of the people that were still naysayers on.
So basically a great study. I think Thomas's idea is great to continue on and build on that great study and focus a little bit more on whey protein. But the bottom line is I think we're going to continue to see the results of these things continue in this direction, that high protein diets are where it's at. just don't make it too complicated on yourself. We want y'all to succeed in whatever your goals are for yourself. And I'm a big believer in that. You know, I don't try to force my clients into, you know, being like me. There are clients who are like me or want to be like me, but most people just want to look good naked, you know, want to be decent naked, want to be able to fit in a bathing suit that they think they look good in, or a dress, or for a guy, you know, a pair of slacks without your gut hanging over it, right? Because fuck the dad bod. Let's be honest. That's just bullshit. You know, you're going to feel when you're fitter, you're going to feel better about yourself. And this is definitely something to focus on, is your protein to be able to do that.
Whoa! Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life.